Oh, come in, come in. Hi, come on in. Do close the door behind you. Come and have a seat. Well, you find me back home again after that nice little sojourn with Martin Shaw, and I've since been to America as well. But it's nice to be back amongst my own things. And haven't had this pipe out for a while. It's Savinelli, which is quite rare for me, but I like it as sort of short-stem church warden. I think they call it Gandalf or Gondalf or something, some variation on Gandalf, which seems appropriate if I'm going to read you a bit more Tolkien. Now, I like the entire range of Tolkien's work, but I'm waiting to be sent, because I'm going to review it, the new 3-volume edition of his poetry, which I'm really looking forward to. But of course the poetry is scattered throughout the books. And then, if you really want to know Tolkien's whole sort of inner understandings of what he does and why he does it, then I can't recommend too highly this little collection of his own writings, Tolkien's writings, Tree and Leaf, which has his great essay on fairy stories, which is, if you like, the tree, and it has his allegorical story about creative writing, Leaf by Niggle, hence Tree and Leaf. But it also has a remarkable poem called Mythopoeia, which literally in Greek means myth-making or story-making. But it's a word which, to which Tolkien and Lewis gave a very deep understanding as really about the primal shaping of the imagination. Indeed, the poem, as quoted in On Fairy Stories, the essay, is addressed to C.S. Lewis. It's from Philomythos to Mythomythos, from the myth lover to the myth hater. It starts brilliantly with a kind of sense of the awful reductiveness of sort of modern scientific life. So as soon as we think we've labelled something accurately or sufficiently, we cease to find it mysterious. It's been catalogued, as it were. We move on to the next thing, which we then again reduce to our nomenclature. So this is naming as a way of so defining as to exclude mystery and the numinous. Exactly the opposite of the kind of naming in the Bible, which names things into being when God says, let there be. Mythopoeia, I'm going to read you all of it. I'll read you some bits of it because it's so good. To one who said that myths were lies and therefore worthless, even though breathed through silver. So, he starts by summoning up, if you like, the modern reductive position. You look at you look at trees and label them, just so. For trees are trees, and growing is to grow. You walk the earth and tread with solemn pace, one of the many minor globes of space. A star's a star, some matter in a ball, compelled to courses mathematical, amid the regimented cold inane, where destined atoms are each moment slain. At bidding of a will, to which we bend, and must but only dimly apprehend, great processes march on as time unrolls, from dark beginnings to uncertain goals, as on page or written without clue, with script and limning packed of various hue, an endless multitude of forms appear, some grim, some frail, some beautiful, some queer, each alien except as kin from one remote origo, gnat, man, stone and sun. Everything is indifferent to everything else. It's just, even if you believe in God, your God is so distant as to not to be inhabiting the world he makes. God made the petrous rocks, the arboreal trees, tellurian earth and stellar stars. Homuncular man, you see, the name is just itself repeated. It doesn't really do anything except catalogue. He goes on to elaborate on that further. And then comes the response, the riposte, which is indeed the riposte which he gave to Lewis on that famous night in September of 1931 when they walked on Addison's Walk together, which was the occasion of this poem. Yet trees are not trees until so named and seen, and never were so named till those had been whose speech's involuted breath unfurled faint echo and dim picture of the world, but neither record nor a photograph being divination, judgment and a laugh, response of those that felt a stir within by deep monition, movements that were kin to life and death of trees, of beasts, of stars, free captives undermining shadowy bars, digging the foreknown from experience and panning the vein of spirit out of sense. In other words, he's saying that when you finally call a thing a tree, in the very act of doing so, you recognize that its nature is also your nature. There's a deep monition inside yourself of movements that are kin. And it's wonderful. And then you look out and you see the same spirit and soul that is in you. Your inner world made outer, in a sense, by these beautiful things. And you find yourself, I love this, like panning for gold in a stream, for a vein of gold, panning the vein of spirit out of sense. Great powers, this is of the first human beings he's now talking about, they, that's the they here. Great powers they slowly brought out of themselves, and looking backwards, they beheld the elves that wrought on cunning forges in the mind, and light on and dark on secret looms entwined. So even the made up, allegedly made up figure of the elf, when it's inwoven and into myth, becomes an expression outwardly of something inner. And we have to see all these things as live, beautiful words and poetry. So he says, he sees no stars who does not see them first of living silver, made that sudden burst of flame like flowers beneath an ancient song, whose very echo after music long has since pursued. There is no firmament, only a void, unless a jewelled tent, myth-woven and elf-patterned, and no earth, unless the mother's womb, whence all have birth. Do you see how he's actually giving personhood and humanity in a way to nature? Then comes perhaps the most famous passage, which is the defense of myth and myth-making. The heart of man is not compound of lies, but draws some wisdom from the only wise, and still recalls him. Though now long estranged, man is not wholly lost, nor wholly changed. This is about the nature of the fall, that the image of God in us may be wounded or defiled or defamed, defaced in some way, but it's still there. Disgraced he may be, yet is not dethroned, and keeps the rags of lordship once he owned, his world dominion by creative act, not his to worship the great artifact that's nature, man, sub-creator, the refracted light through whom is splintered from a single white to many hues and endlessly combined in living shapes that move from mind to mind. What a perfect account of what his own myth-making is in the Silmarillion. It's a series of living shapes that move from mind to mind, from his mind to your mind. Though all the crannies of the world we filled with elves and goblins, though we dared to build gods and their houses out of dark and light, and sow the seed of dragons, 'twas our right, used or misused, the right has not decayed. We make still by the law in which we're made. So as we were made in the name of a creator, so we create. And then he has this wonderful thing where he refuses to kowtow to the kind of reductivism of the age, or to concede that he's just writing wish fulfillment fantasies. No, he says, I'm unfolding and branching out what itself is real and true. And then he says this is wonderful. I will not walk with your progressive apes erect and sapient. Before them gapes the dark abyss to which their progress tends. If by God's mercy progress never ends, and does not ceaselessly revolve the same unfruitful course with changing of a name, I will not tread your dusty path, and flat, denoting this by this and that by that, your world immutable, wherein no part the little maker has with maker's art. I bow not yet before the iron crown, nor cast my own small golden sceptre down. That's magnificent. It's an encouragement, I think, to anyone who feels that in making stories as true to themselves as they can be, in working with the imagination at a deep and primary level, open to the divine imagination, it's possible to express truths that might not be found or expressed in any other way. And one thinks of the myriad truths that come generously and generatively from every rereading of The Lord of the Rings. But there's much more of that, and it's really, really worth your while. But that gives you a little taste of a kind of inner poetic credo with which I entirely resonate, and which is something that encourages me in my own reworking of the Arthurian legends, among others. Anyway, thanks for dropping round. It's nice for me to be back again, and glad you found me here. Cheers.